Why would a single joke cost me everything I built with him? How did one word, complainer, turn into lawyers, silence, and my name on a formal notice? When I humiliated him that night, everyone laughed. I didn't know he'd be the one standing calm when the laughter stopped. I used to think being the funny one in a relationship made me special. People always said I had a sharp tongue, that I could make any room laugh. I liked that about myself, the control it gave me. Ryan, my boyfriend, was quiet, careful with his words, the kind of man who smiled instead of arguing. It made me feel bigger next to him, like I could fill the silence however I wanted. And I did. I said things that made people laugh, even when the joke was him. When I planned his birthday, I told everyone it would be fun and light, something he'd remember. I didn't tell him that part of the surprise was me roasting him in front of our friends. I thought he'd take it as proof of how close we were. That kind of teasing you can only do when you know someone inside out. It never crossed my mind that he'd be hurt. We'd been together for 3 years. He'd always been steady, predictable. I used to find it comforting. Lately, I found it dull. I started talking to Eli from work, a guy who laughed at all my stories, and said Ryan must be a saint to put up with me. I took it as a compliment. I told Eli that Ryan was sensitive, too careful, too afraid to live a little. Eli grinned and said maybe someone needed to shake him up. I laughed. I didn't know that was exactly what I was about to do. That night, the restaurant lights were warm and golden, music playing softly under the noise of conversation. Everyone was watching us, smiling. I had the mic in one hand and a glass of champagne in the other. Ryan sat across the table, waiting for his toast, probably expecting something sweet. Instead, I made everyone laugh. I told stories about how bad he was at dancing, how he once cried during a commercial, how I sometimes wondered how I'd ended up with someone so careful. Then I raised my glass and said, "To my favorite complainer." People laughed. It was the kind of laughter that fills every corner of a room. But Ryan didn't. He just looked at me for a moment, expression calm, eyes distant, and then he stood up and walked away. I remember laughing again to cover the silence, pretending it was no big deal. It was just a joke, I told myself, just a joke. But now, when I think of that moment, I can still hear the sound of his chair sliding back, the music faltering, and my voice echoing over the microphone. That was the moment everything started to unravel. The moment I mistook humiliation for humor and love for control. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The morning of Ryan's birthday started the same as any other. I woke up before him, made coffee, and scrolled through my phone while he got ready for work. He came out of the bedroom wearing that grey button-down I always teased him about, the one that made him look like a teacher. He smiled when he saw the decorations I'd put up the night before, little balloons and a cheap banner that said, "Happy 34th," in crooked letters. He said it was sweet of me, and I shrugged, pretending it was no big deal. In truth, I'd spent hours on it, making sure the colors matched and the cupcakes looked just right. I wanted people to see how much effort I'd put in, how perfect the night would be. But when he tried to thank me, I joked that he'd better not cry or I'd take it all down. He laughed quietly, but his smile faded fast. He asked if we could just have a small dinner, maybe stay home this year. I told him that was boring, that we needed to do something fun. "You only turn 34 once," I said. "Don't be an old man about it." He looked like he wanted to argue but didn't. That was Ryan. He rarely fought me, which I took as weakness back then. At work, I couldn't focus. Eli kept walking by my desk, making jokes about how Ryan was probably the kind of guy who clapped when the plane landed. I laughed every time, though deep down I knew I shouldn't have. Eli leaned on the cubicle wall and asked if I'd decided on my speech yet. "Speech?" I asked, pretending to forget. He smirked. "The roast. The one you said would make everyone cry laughing. I told him I was still writing it, but honestly, I'd already rehearsed most of it in my head. I told myself it wasn't mean, that Ryan would see it as playful. He needed to loosen up. Everyone always said he was too serious. Even my sister Tara once joked that he made her nervous just by sitting still. I used that as proof that it wasn't just me who thought he needed shaking. When I got home that afternoon, Ryan was on the couch working on his laptop. He looked tired, but when I kissed his forehead, he smiled. "You okay?" he asked. I said I was fine, just busy. He told me not to stress about the party, that he didn't care if things weren't perfect. I told him they would be. I didn't mean perfect for him. I meant perfect for me, for how it would look to everyone else. He asked if Eli would be there. The question caught me off guard. I said yes, of course, since we invited the whole team. Ryan just nodded and went back to typing. I told myself I didn't need to feel guilty, that Eli was just a friend who got my sense of humor. Ryan didn't laugh at my sarcasm the way Eli did. He took everything too literally. After dinner, Ryan started cleaning the kitchen. I sat on the counter scrolling through my phone, half listening to him hum under his breath. I posted a photo of the decorations with the caption, "He has no idea what's coming." People liked it within minutes. One of my co-workers commented, "Can't wait for your roast, Queen." I grinned, already imagining how funny I'd sound holding the mic, everyone laughing with me. When he came over to hug me goodnight, I pushed him away jokingly and said, "Save that for tomorrow when you're drunk enough to deserve it." He chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He whispered something about being lucky to have me, and I felt a sudden wave of irritation. I didn't want soft words. I wanted him to match my energy, to be bold for once. After he went to bed, I poured myself another glass of wine and opened my notes app. I started writing bullet points for the toast. His awful haircut in college. How he cried at that puppy commercial. How I thought I was dating a CEO and ended up with a coder in sweatpants. Each one made me laugh harder. I convinced myself I was being clever, not cruel. When I finally climbed into bed, Ryan stirred and reached for my hand. His fingers brushed mine, gentle and warm. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold on either. I told myself tomorrow would remind him how lucky he was to have someone who could make people laugh. As I drifted off, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a message from Eli. "Can't wait to hear your complainer joke tomorrow. It's going to kill." I smiled in the dark, imagining the laughter, the attention, the flash of cameras. Ryan mumbled something in his sleep and turned over. The room went quiet again, but I couldn't stop smiling. I thought I was about to give him a birthday he'd never forget. I just didn't realize how right I was. The next morning, I woke up feeling electric, like I was performing in a show I'd written myself. Ryan was already in the kitchen making breakfast. He was wearing the same shirt from yesterday, sleeves rolled up, moving calmly like he always did. I kissed his cheek and said he looked handsome. He smiled, surprised, like he didn't know whether to believe me. He asked if I'd slept well. I said yes, better than ever. I didn't tell him I'd stayed awake half the night rehearsing my jokes in my head. He said he hoped the night would be simple and low-key. I promised it would be fun, but nothing crazy. He believed me, because that's what he always did. By midday, my phone was full of messages. Friends confirming the reservation, co-workers asking what to wear, Tara sending me a picture of the cake she'd picked up. Eli texted, "Don't chicken out on the speech." I sent back a laughing emoji. When Ryan got home from work, he looked tense. He said he didn't feel like being the center of attention. I teased him that it wasn't his birthday if people didn't look at him. He said, "Maybe we could just do dinner, skip the crowd." I laughed and told him to trust me. He didn't argue, but he sighed quietly, and I ignored it. We got to the rooftop bar early. The city lights below shimmered, and the place smelled of citrus and smoke. The tables were covered with candles, and a small stage stood at the center for speeches and music. It was perfect, elegant, loud, full of eyes. Ryan thanked the host politely, then leaned over and said, "This feels like a lot, Lena." I told him to stop worrying and enjoy himself. When our friends started arriving, the energy lifted. Eli hugged me a little too long, whispering that I looked amazing. I laughed and told him not to get me in trouble. Ryan noticed but said nothing. He chatted with Mason and ordered drinks for everyone. I watched him, thinking he looked too plain beside me, like the straight man in a comedy act. As people took their seats, Tara kept filming everything on her phone. I loved it, the attention, the lights, the sound of my own laughter filling the air. Ryan tried to give a short thank you speech, but people kept interrupting, shouting jokes. He smiled politely through it, the same way he did when I teased him at home. When he sat down, I leaned over and said, "You're too serious, babe. Let me fix that later." Eli stood to make a toast first. He called Ryan the most patient man alive, and everyone laughed. Ryan smiled awkwardly, glancing at me. Then Eli added, "And lucky enough to have a girlfriend who keeps him humble." The table erupted again. I laughed the loudest. After dinner, it was my turn. I tapped my glass with a fork and told everyone to quiet down. The room dimmed a little, candles flickering, faces turned toward me. Ryan looked up, curious, still smiling. I felt the rush, that warm, dizzy thrill of being seen. I started soft, telling a few cute stories about how we met. Everyone smiled, relaxed. Then I slipped in the jokes, one after another. How he wore socks to the beach. How he once called the wrong number and ended up comforting a stranger for an hour. The room filled with laughter. Ryan smiled, small and unsure. Then I said it. "He's not just my boyfriend, he's my favorite complainer." The laughter came fast, louder than before. I lifted my glass, pretending not to notice the way his expression froze. For a second, he just sat there, eyes on me, the corner of his mouth twitching like he might say something. Then he set down his glass carefully, pushed his chair back, and stood up. Everyone went quiet. The music still played faintly, but it sounded far away. I tried to laugh, to make it seem like part of the joke. He didn't speak. He just looked at me. Not angry, not sad, just done. Then he nodded once, turned, and walked toward the exit. Tara whispered, "What's he doing?" I shrugged, still smiling, pretending it was fine. People glanced at each other, unsure whether to laugh again or stay silent. Eli muttered that Ryan was being dramatic. I told everyone not to worry, that he'd come back after cooling off. But as I watched him disappear through the glass doors, a strange heaviness filled my chest. For the first time that night, the laughter sounded wrong. When I sat down, Mason leaned over and said he'd gotten it all on video. "It's gold," he whispered. I forced a laugh, told him to send it to me later. He nodded and started uploading it to the group chat. A camera flash went off across the table. Someone capturing the moment, me mid-smile, holding the glass that had just broken something I couldn't fix. When I got home that night, the apartment felt too clean, too quiet. Ryan's shoes weren't by the door. His jacket was gone. I tried to tell myself he'd just gone for a walk, that he needed to calm down. I poured myself a glass of water and scrolled through my phone, pretending not to notice the hollow space where his things should be. My notifications were lighting up. Mason had already uploaded the video to the group chat. Lena's legendary roast. He'd captioned it. The clip started with me laughing, everyone clapping, and then Ryan standing up, his face unreadable. I watched it twice, then 3 times. It didn't look how I remembered it. The laughter seemed cruel now, like something sharp cutting through the air. Tara called a few minutes later. She said she'd just seen the video too. Her voice was careful, like she didn't want to make things worse. She said maybe I'd gone too far. I told her everyone was too sensitive. She said quietly, "You embarrassed him, Lena." I hung up. By morning, Ryan still wasn't home. I texted him, "You're overreacting." It was just a joke. He didn't reply. At noon, I called. Straight to voicemail. The next day, my coworkers started whispering. Eli told me the video had spread beyond our group chat. Someone had posted it on a local page. I laughed and said maybe it would go viral. But my stomach twisted when I said it. At lunch, Eli sat next to me, grinning. "You're trending for all the wrong reasons," he said. He meant it as a joke, but I didn't laugh. He asked if Ryan had said anything yet. I told him Ryan was being childish. Eli said maybe I should apologize. Not because I was wrong, but because people were talking. When I got home that evening, the apartment was still empty. A note sat on the kitchen counter in Ryan's neat handwriting. "Need time. Don't contact me for a while." That was it. No anger, no explanation, just distance. I crumpled the note and threw it away, telling myself he'd come back when he realized how ridiculous this was. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. Dozens of new notifications. Someone had shared the video on a meme page. The caption read, "When your girl ruins your birthday and your life in one sentence." The comments were worse. Strangers called me cruel, heartless, pathetic. I sat there scrolling, unable to stop. I tried calling Ryan again. Voicemail. I left a message saying I didn't deserve this kind of treatment, that he was making me look bad. My voice cracked halfway through, and I hated how desperate it sounded. Around midnight, Tara texted me. "He's staying with Mum." I typed back, "Tell him to call me," but she didn't answer. When I finally put my phone down, I noticed his laptop was gone too. Only a few folders on the shared drive remained, renamed with dates and numbers I didn't recognize. A quiet panic spread through me. Then, from outside the door, I heard footsteps pause. Steady, heavy. They stopped, lingered, then faded down the hallway. I waited, heart pounding, unsure whether to hope it was him or dread what he might do next. The following weekend, I went to Ryan's mother's house thinking I could fix everything. Marjorie had always liked me, or at least tolerated me. I told myself she'd talk some sense into him. When she opened the door, she didn't smile. She looked tired, her lips pressed together. She said Ryan was out running errands and stepped aside so I could come in. The house smelled like coffee and lemon polish, the same as always, but it felt different, colder. I started talking fast, saying the whole thing had been blown out of proportion. She didn't interrupt, just listened, her eyes steady on me. When I finished, she said, "You made a fool of him, Lena, in front of everyone he loves." I said it was supposed to be funny. She shook her head. "You called him a complainer. You can't dress that up as humor." I told her he was being dramatic, that he'd done worse things by ignoring me for days. She sighed and said, "He's not ignoring you. He's protecting himself." That word stung. Protecting himself from me. I left before she could say anything else. At home, I tried to distract myself by scrolling through social media, but it was worse there. The video was everywhere now. People were stitching it with commentary, strangers using my name as a punchline. Eli messaged me saying maybe it was time to lay low for a bit. I told him it would blow over soon. He sent a thumbs up and stopped replying. That night, Tara came by uninvited. She looked angry and sad all at once. "He's not coming back," she said the moment I opened the door. I told her she was being dramatic. She said, "You humiliated him, and now you're surprised he doesn't want to look at you." I told her she was taking his side. She said there weren't sides, just consequences. I slammed the door before she could finish. The apartment was too quiet after she left. I went into the bedroom and pulled open drawers, looking for something of Ryan's he might have left behind. There was almost nothing. Just one old hoodie and an empty space where his watch box used to sit. I sat on the floor holding that hoodie, realizing how quickly someone can erase their presence from a place. When I finally got up, I noticed his desk drawer slightly open. Inside were a few papers, bank statements, printouts, something folded with my name, written neatly across the top. I picked it up, but before I could open it, I heard a knock at the door. My first thought was Ryan. My second was that I didn't know what I'd say if it was. I opened it to find my neighbor standing there awkwardly, phone in hand. "Hey," she said, not meeting my eyes. "You should probably see this." She showed me a screen, another post, this one from a local blog. "Birthday roast goes too far. Viral clip sparks online debate." My face froze in mid-laugh, the caption calling me the girlfriend who couldn't read a room. I stared at it until she mumbled an apology and left. I closed the door slowly, the paper still in my hand. It felt heavy, though it was just ink and air. When I unfolded it, I saw Ryan's handwriting again. A simple list of dates, expenses, names. No explanation. Just order where chaos had been. I told myself it meant nothing. Just another sign of how obsessive he could be. Then the hallway outside went quiet again. The kind of quiet that makes you realize how alone you really are. A week passed before I heard from Ryan again. It wasn't a call or a message, just a single email with the subject line, "Shared access." When I opened it, it was a link to a new folder on our old cloud drive. Inside were scanned receipts, screenshots, labeled files. Some of them were mine. Jokes I'd posted, photos from the party, text exchanges with Eli. Every file was named neatly, each time-stamped. I stared at the list, my throat tightening. It wasn't angry, it wasn't emotional, it was organized. That night, I couldn't stop pacing. I told myself he was bluffing, trying to scare me into apologizing. But what scared me most was the calm behind it. Ryan never did anything halfway. If he'd started something, it meant he was finishing it. The next morning, I went to his office building. I told the receptionist I was there to see him. She looked uncomfortable, said he was in a meeting. I waited anyway, but after an hour she came back and said he'd already left through another exit. I drove home shaking with frustration. I called his phone. No answer. I left a voicemail, saying he was being childish, that I'd had enough of this silent treatment. My voice cracked again, and I hated it. When I got home, I saw the apartment differently. His absence had shape now. The walls felt emptier, the colors duller. I poured myself wine and opened social media, only to see a new post spreading. A side-by-side comparison of me laughing and him walking out. The caption said, "Modern love in one picture." Thousands of comments. I threw my phone onto the couch and went to the balcony for air. The city below glowed like nothing had changed. I whispered to no one. It wasn't supposed to go like this. Then I heard a knock. It wasn't the door. It was on the railing of the balcony. Ryan stood there, calm as ever. He must have let himself in with his old key. My heart jumped, half relief, half panic. He asked if we could talk. I said, "Finally." We sat inside, the air between us thick and strange. He looked around the apartment as if taking inventory. I started apologizing, or what I thought sounded like an apology. I said I'd only wanted to make him laugh, that everyone took it the wrong way. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said quietly, "You're still talking about how it looked, not how it felt." I didn't answer. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small notebook, flipping it open. "I've been keeping track," he said. I laughed nervously, asked if he was turning into a detective. "No," he said. "I'm just making sure everything's clear." He stood, closing the book. "I'm not here to fight," he added. "I'm here to let you know I'll handle this properly." I frowned. "Handle what properly?" He met my eyes, calm and unreadable. "The truth," he said. Before I could respond, he picked up his keys and left. The door clicked softly behind him, that same quiet final sound from the night of the party. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty chair where he'd been. On the table lay his notebook, a small corner of paper sticking out with the words, "Downtown 10:15, written in his handwriting. I told myself for days that he was bluffing, that "handle it properly" didn't mean anything serious. But the silence that followed wasn't normal silence. It was measured, purposeful. Even Tara stopped returning my calls. When she finally did, her voice was distant. She said Ryan was doing what he needs to do. I asked what that meant, but she only said, "You'll find out soon." The next morning, I went to the coffee shop near Ryan's office, the one we used to visit on weekends. I thought if I waited there long enough, he'd show up and we could talk. I even practiced what I'd say. That it was all a misunderstanding, that people had twisted everything. I ordered his favorite drink, hoping it would make him soften when he saw me. The cafe was busy, people typing on laptops, music humming softly. My heart jumped every time the door opened. After almost an hour, I saw him outside through the glass. He looked composed, wearing that same grey shirt from his birthday. I stood, ready to wave him over, but he wasn't alone. A man in a dark suit walked beside him, holding a folder. They spoke briefly, and then the man came inside. He scanned the room until his eyes met mine. "Ms. Morell?" he asked. My voice caught when I said yes. He handed me an envelope. "You've been served," he said quietly. I froze. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The paper felt heavier than it should have. I tore it open right there, hands shaking. Inside was an official notice, a civil complaint for defamation, an invasion of privacy, listing specific damages related to the viral video. My name was printed neatly beside his. The date of filing matched the one I'd seen in Ryan's notebook, downtown 10:15. When I looked up, Ryan was still outside, watching through the window. He didn't look angry, just steady, resolved. I stepped toward the glass, but he didn't move. I mouthed, "Can we talk?" He shook his head once. I walked outside, the papers still clutched in my hand. "Ryan, please," I said. "You can't be serious, it was just a joke." He looked at me the way someone looks at a stranger they used to know. "It stopped being a joke when you made it public," he said. "Now I'm doing the same, publicly." People nearby had turned to watch. I tried to explain, saying he was ruining both of us, but he only nodded toward the envelope. "No," he said quietly. "You did that yourself." Then he turned and walked away, his posture calm, unhurried. The man in the suit followed. I stood there on the sidewalk, surrounded by murmuring strangers and the sound of steaming milk from inside the cafe. The papers trembled in my hands. A camera phone flashed somewhere behind me. The light caught my face mid-blink, the moment the joke stopped being funny forever. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.